You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris, Russ the producer, and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinthemorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
How about you, Russ?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
Liberty?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
Special guest, Ben Manis. What's it called? Mike G in the Morning.
You want me to say it?
I want you to say it, sir.
MikeGinthemorning.com. I'm just trying to figure out why a guy's putting mustard in cereal.
You'll find out soon enough. You can check out all the shenanigans that Mike G and Philly Chris are up to throughout the entire week. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who listen to check us out at MikeGinthemorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams. Bring you the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until 11. We've got Dan the Man Bongino. Bring you the Dan Bongino Show weekdays from noon until 3 p.m. We've got the headliner, intellectual giant Ben Shapiro. Bring you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And finally, we love having him at the Freedom Station family. We've got Michael Knowles. Bringing you the Michael Knowles Show weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hit it, Russ. You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. We have a very special guest joining us for this episode of the Mike G in the Morning program. We've got Ben Manis. He's a journalist. He's an expert in compliance, investigation, security, and safety. Ben has served as an expert witness and a consultant as the principal of Manis and Associates for the last 2 decades. And he lived the absolute horror story of being the good guy with a gun in the wrong jurisdiction, which changed his life forever. We're going to talk about things from A to Z with him today. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me.
So, Ben, why don't you tell folks a little bit about where you're based and what you do to just get everybody acclimated?
Yeah, so currently I am in Philadelphia, but I work globally. Since 2003, the proprietor of a small firm, Manis and Associates. The associates are mainly like I was when I formed it. I was an off-duty cop in D.C. At the time, this was pre-Heller, and that ended up being the law that got me. But if you were doing some kind of armed protection detail, specialized security consulting, risk assessment in the district, you mainly had to hire off-duty law enforcement because no one could get a gun permit from 1977 to 2008. So it was my side hustle while I was a cop. And because of the misfortunes I had, it ended up being my principal job up into the point where I was appointed the director of investigations at the American Board of Internal Medicine. And then after 2 terms there, when I turned out, I ended up going over to that full time again. And I worked in, both security investigations and compliance, duty of care stuff. And that's important because what we're seeing nowadays, things are getting a lot more dangerous again, like it was in the late 80s and early 90s when I jumped into this game. And as it gets more dangerous, the liability never gets accepted by the public authorities that may have contributed to it getting more dangerous.
Sure.
So what it means is if you're a employer, if you're a landlord, if you're a public venues manager, a nightclub manager, a hotel manager, a restaurateur, I don't care what you are. Something happening to someone, whether it be safety, because I am OSHA certified, or security on your premises, if you didn't have a plan, if you didn't have some kind of policy or procedure in place, it's on you. So don't just pick up the phone and call, ADT or something. Hire an expert, get a plan, and then be an informed consumer in that marketplace. And that's what I do.
Now, when you deal with these businesses, are they primarily big corporations, or do you deal with small businesses as well?
I'd have a mixture. Right now, I'm involved in a compliance contract for another month. So now I got to go hustle for new work. But for at least one more month out of the better part of a year now, I've been working for a pretty big bank here in the Delaware Valley, with 2 headquarters in both Wilmington and Philly. But I've done expert witness work for lawyers like you, Mike. So, I mean, you had situations like I've been engaged twice, just in the last year, I've been called by attorneys, and they have to go get their discovery and then call me back so that they're ready for me. But, someone had a nightclub or an off premise at a restaurant, and a fight broke out and someone got shot in a parking lot.
Wow.
Who's to blame? Is the duty of care on the restaurant, or is it merely on the perp? You need someone like me to kind of delve into the depths of the case and find out where the liability lives. And then, of course, my joy is working with the more proactive folks, even schools. I mean, there's pretty big districts right here in the Delaware Valley that have engaged me through other firms that have me doing threat assessments. One of which actually reestablished their police department as a result, because it was a district that straddled 2 small towns, and the police could be there, but they can't literally be there 24 hours. So that district created a police department based on my recommendations. Then there was a college system that I did, similar thing, because we were responding after Parkland. I ran around with Andrew Pollock for a while. And remember, Andrew Pollock lost his daughter at Parkland, former New Yorker like myself. But he was a scrap metal guy. So when he got up at the White House and told President Trump, we have to fix it, and that became his big hashtag, fix it. Great. You've got a hashtag. Now you've got the 15 minutes of national spotlight. But the first thing people are going to ask you is, how do we fix it?
Right.
So I did a lot of emails and phone calls back and forth, but physically together, me and his crew, we had one real solid 16-hour day of work in DC, where we did a congressional delegation. We had a meeting with a very large security manufacturer in Maryland. And then we literally went to the Turning Point USA conference with his son to speak. And we still had drinks at the hotel afterwards. So it was one of those long days. But that, having met with then Congressman DeSantis on that delegation, led us to the law that's now called the Guardian Law in Florida. And a similar law has since been passed here in Pennsylvania. And guess who's on the curriculum committee? One of my clients is PCCD's client. We write that entire curriculum for all the school safety officers in PA. So doesn't matter what sector. It's easy to think, oh, well, we need security at schools. But what about the restaurant? What about the bar, especially the bar? Things like that. Simply picking up the phone and calling the cops in an era where there's very little consequences for violent crime isn't going to cut it anymore. So you have to create your own plan. That also goes for things like disasters and business continuity, which is another thing I do. Why? You're looking at a dinosaur. I've been through the 9/11 planning in Washington, D.C.'s municipal planning for 9/11. 9/11. Jesus. Y2K. Then I did 9/11. Then I did the sniper. And then on my external details with Homeland, I did Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and then Sandy with the medical board, because we were global. So it's continuity of operations isn't just like, oh, well, we'll have everyone work from home like we saw with COVID.
Right.
Because if the IT infrastructure or the policy or the goal-based leadership and supervision isn't there, having a computer isn't going to do it for you.
Right.
So you really have to have your ducks in a row and think from the worst case scenario out.
Do you think a lot of these businesses and these entities, whether they're large or small, overlook this and maybe find out when it's too late? They're coming to you after the fact.
I wouldn't have a client book if it wasn't the case.
Wow.
Unfortunately, yes, that is, and it's something we're very keen to in America. Having worked overseas, I will say we are in a very big hurry to quote unquote get back to normal, or blame something external for not having a plan. Great example of that would be active shooters, right? If you look at the places that actually get workplace violence prevention plans, feasible ones, and invest in physical security, they're a very small microcosm of the global, which is let's blame something external, whether it's guns on the left, mental health on the right, and then pretend it's going to go away. And then it happens to you later.
What are some of the things on your radar, Ben, that maybe people are not thinking about as enough?
Well, physical security is always going to be your first line of defense there. Because you have two types of, if you're just looking at the workplace threat, the active shooter, right? It's not just workplace, it's faith-based, it's school-based, but the public venues, right? You look at those things and you have internal threats and external threats, but the external threats, 90% of the time, the door is open and there's no security on site.
Wow.
Something simple.
So, once you have to do your low hanging fruit first, and let's face it, and not doing any fruit first. You're focusing, and not you. But the public, the media concern, the talking points are never focused on what makes it work. Look, I'm a New Yorker originally. We've had the Sullivan Act in New York since 1900. So you mean to tell me gun control is what you're going to look at when there's an active shooter incident?
Right.
Because you've had it.
Yeah.
Chicago had it. DC had it. And we could go run down the line.
Right.
So you look at the places where they do figure things out, and you're looking at the ones with shorter response times. So, the Capital Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland, cops on the scene within 2 minutes. Texas, they usually have someone on site providing armed security. These interventions, you're never going to stop crazy, but we could start mitigating crazy. And once we start doing that, we could then look at insider threat, which is early warning detection systems. We've all seen interviews. I remember covering in both the Arizona Republic and in Philly Daily News, did pieces on Adam Lanza, the Sandy Hook.
Right.
And his mother used to go to the bar and talk about how crazy her kid is in the basement playing first-person shooter games, writing lists of people he wishes he could kill on his bedroom wall.
Yeah.
Well, honey, why didn't you do anything about it?
Right.
So, we have to really get into mechanisms, and there are compromises there. I am, an ardent Second Amendment person because I've obviously bore the brunt of it, and you teased it, and we'll let you get into it after this, I guess. But, for them to keep considering controlling the tool when there is absolutely no HIPAA exception on the form. So if we've all filled out the ATF form, there's a checkbox in it that says you're not under mental health treatment. You're not,
have you been adjudicated mentally defective or involuntarily committed to a mental hospital?
Right. And we both know the only time that's going to actually return is if you've been criminally adjudicated or sent by a court of law.
Well, not exactly. So we could just get into that a little bit because in Pennsylvania, and obviously I'm not licensed to practice in all 50 states, but I could talk a lot about the Mental Health Procedures Act here in Pennsylvania. There's a little bit of a misconception when it comes to how these records come to be over here. Under the Mental Health Procedures Act, if somebody's been what we call 302'd, then they can be kept for up to 120 hours. If they want to keep you for longer than 120 hours, then they have to petition for a 303 within the first 72 hours. And when you talk about a 303 hearing, it's not in a courtroom with a judge who's in a robe or anything like that. It's typically a conference room at the hospital.
Yeah.
There's a hearing officer who sits at the head of the table. And a lot of people mistakenly think that that's what it takes in order to become prohibited, but it isn't. The minute that certification is signed on that 302, which takes an accusation and a doctor's signature, then that person is prohibited from possessing firearms for life, unless and until you seek the appropriate relief, whether it be expungement or relief from disabilities under 6105F. And unfortunately, and the way that gets enforced here in Pennsylvania is they have to send what's known as an Act 77 notice once that 302 has been certified over to the Pennsylvania State Police, and that gets stored in the records for the Pennsylvania Instant Check System. So that's how these people pop on a 302, even though they've never been in front of a judge. They saw a doctor for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Once you get the accusation, you got that doctor's signature, that Act 77 notice is going. And we've even had cases, we're litigating one right now, where they have an Act 77 notice on this gentleman from over 20 years ago. They have no copy of the 302 application and no copy of the certification. Now, this gentleman swears up and down that he has never been 302'd. His mother testified at the hearing that his grandfather died that day or the day before, and they were at the funeral during that point in time. So it was impossible for him to be in a mental hospital involuntarily. We're waiting on the decision of that, but PSP had denied him and upheld the denial based on their record in the system, that Act 77 notice in and of itself. So that's a complicated thing we could talk about for 2 days.
Yeah, we could get in the weeds. The listeners are probably crashing their car right now from lack of coffee.
If you could throw some more numbers around, Mike.
I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to this.
And listen, Mike, because we both served with gubernatorial candidate Barletta to try to change some of these. One of the big things I was doing, I was on his public safety advisory board. We were going to streamline the entire Pennsylvania, the way, at least on the procedural side, things run, because it is arcane the way everything's through act numbers.
Right.
In New York, for example, where I started, I went New York to DC to federal. Okay. Actually back and forth from federal. But in New York, where I started, you're either a peace officer or a police officer. That's it. So the fact that the state police don't want to recognize sheriffs in Pennsylvania because they're Act 2 and we're Act 120, and all the constables.
Yeah, don't even start talking about the constables.
but they can't have a light in their car, which is the fact that, and you're a lawyer, the fact that no one has raised the suit because they're transporting a prisoner who may have a stroke. The eye doctor, the organ donor vehicle has lights and sirens, but an armed constable doesn't. It's Pennsylvania is just running like it's still the 1800s when it comes to statutory law. And why does this matter? This matters because a lot of the stuff that has been passed off on the public as criminal justice reform and inequality is simply justifying crappy procedures that result in inequalities. I mean, let me put it to you this way. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are both cities straddled with woke DAs that have driving equality laws and all this crazy stuff. They're both places where you're looking at an easy 3 hours off the street to process an arrest, and at least 3 or 4 court appearances before we've decided whether or not we're going to trial, because of this entirely ancient system. And you look at the 3 cities where crime, major cities, I'm not counting the small ones, where crime actually dropped in the United States last year, despite massive population increases: Miami, Dallas, and Houston. Dallas and Houston being blue cities. So it isn't a blue versus red thing, right? What do they have that we don't? When a cop comes off the street, they spend 20 minutes doing a probable cause form. They take the body and the form over to the county sheriff. The county sheriff walks that guy in front of a 24-hour magistrate who looks at that cop and says, "Do you swear and affirm?" "Yes, I do." "You're either held or you're not." The decision's made. The preliminary hearing is literally right there. and it's not weeks, months, down the line where this poor schlub may be sitting at CFCF. So Krasner's had you all believing that we needed to abolish cash bail because of inequalities, and then he throws the numbers in front of your face. But no one's considered the fact that we have a completely dysfunctional sheriff system in the state. And it's not just here, it's most of these Rust Belt northern states where these problems are happening. Wayne County, Michigan, Cook County, Illinois, the entire New York City system, Jersey. So, yeah, we could be copying the Joneses and staying within our constitutional and habeas responsibilities. That's why I have a living, because I look at best practices and try to apply them. But publicly, there is an industry out there to keep people in this system. It's a cottage industry.
Right.
And Krasner should know because he became wealthy on the recipient side of that industry before deciding he wanted to be Soros' candidate in Philadelphia.
I want to go back to something that you've mentioned twice so far. It mentioned that you're a former New Yorker. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to be a New Yorker, and yes, I'm a Yankee fan.
Okay. That means
warts and all, injuries and all.
You selected the correct team, although I have to admit I've not watched an inning since they put out a very ignorant anti-gun tweet a while back. So
actually, they did a mea culpa on that. A lot of the patriotic stuff, it is one thing I love about the Yankees. And the funny thing was, I was born into this. My father, was a Yankee fan from the Bronx. His father was a Yankee fan from the Bronx. So it wasn't until I got on the job, I was actually at an intellectual property rights conference. We're learning how to investigate piracy. That the corporate security director from Tiffany's, of all places, was doing a quiz and throwing swag into the crowd. And he taught me that the NY, the Yankees logo, was developed for the NYPD by Tiffany's.
Oh,
because they didn't wear patches in that era.
Huh.
And NYPD said, no, we're good. We got plenty of logos. And then the Yankees said, we'll take it.
Wow.
And so a lot of the patriotic stuff you see, and I'm sure there's some very angry Phillies fan out there right now going, they suck anyhow. They buy your teams. But a lot of the patriotic, so the seventh inning stretch, God Bless America,
right,
emerged from the fact that the 9/11 attacks happened while the Yankees were in the playoffs, and they had to take a pause because you couldn't fly planes or travel or have public events for at least 2 weeks. And the first time they came back, they had an NYPD officer who was an opera singer. He was, a trained opera singer, come out and do God Bless America in the seventh inning. That's the famous game where Bush came out and threw out the first pitch and the FDNY. So yeah, I mean, it was
the Secret Service agent was dressed like an umpire, right? You've seen that?
It might have been. Who knows? It was Enrico Palazzo. So
he threw a pretty good pitch, right? Didn't he? Actually threw a pretty good pitch.
He used to own the Rangers, so he was around baseball. But yeah, I mean, you're all this, kind of patriotic stuff they're doing around the ball game now, other than national anthem, was because the Yankees started it in honor of all the guys we lost on 9/11. And another thing, for the last 35 years, there's no policy about it. It's not written anywhere, but the Yankees send a bouquet of flowers to every fallen cop in the country.
Oh, wow.
So there's right now, if a Boston cop, the MIT cop who died during, the Boston bombers were running and they killed Sean Collier, a little MIT cop, a diehard Red Sox fan.
Right.
And he had this bouquet at his funeral from the Yankees because they don't care where you're from. You died in the line of duty, they're sending you flowers.
That's great.
That's something else.
So it's just one of those, like, you're never going to get that out of me. I wouldn't try it anyhow. I'm tattooed with it, but it is what it is.
Were you in New York on 9/11?
No, I was in DC.
You were in DC.
So I worked the Pentagon. Actually worked Joint Operations Command. So there's some things I can talk about and some things I can't.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
sure.
Whether or not we were shutting the city down, whether or not we were shutting Metro down, what were we going to do when the third plane was still in the air? Because we knew where it was coming. working with Capitol and U.S. Secret Service Uniform Division to evacuate the areas around the 2 prospective targets there, and then sending CDU out to the Pentagon because DPS, that now they call it the Pentagon Police, but it was DPS back then, and they were just overwhelmed. And Arlington only has 500 guys anyhow. Technically, that's a carve out, the Pentagon. The address is Washington, D.C., but it's actually in Arlington. It's across the river.
Gotcha.
So we sent our guy, we sent our CDU platoons out there to work the scene. And then after I believe the first 2 weeks is what it took before we started getting days off again. And then I started going to New York because unfortunately knew 3 people NYPD.
Oh, wow.
So I wasn't going to just sit home.
Yeah.
You know, I went up there, I dug a little. Thank God I wasn't there all the time like my friends because they have to go get the physical every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, real sad day, you know, not to take the focus away, but I was sitting there in high school in Staten Island Tech, and the kid who was sitting next to me in class when we got the news, unfortunately, his father did not come home that day. He was a firefighter in New York. Were you raised?
I ended up becoming a certified instructor in a program called CAT-EYES, Community Anti-Terrorism Training Institute. They're based out of New Jersey. They were based out of New Jersey because a retired lieutenant colonel at the time from McGuire, he got out, he retired and he started teaching for Jersey City. And they had him at the high school there. When you're coming off the turnpike, it's right it's on the cliff. So they have that full view of Lower Manhattan. And this whole classroom saw the plane go in.
Wow.
And he shortly thereafter resigned and went back to the military. He developed the CAT-EYES program on the side and, stayed in long enough to get his full berth. But there's a lot of guys. My old boss at Homeland was like that. He was the retired BNSF Railroad Police Chief out in California, former Marine captain, and saw what was happening and signed up and went back. Became one of the first rail guys they had at TSA.
It was a wild time. Were you raised in the Bronx, you said?
No, my family's from the Bronx. My young years, my parents got divorced. You want to talk about you can't go home again, right?
Uh-huh.
I can never go home again. My New York childhood was in East Village.
Okay.
So my dad, we lived on 13th and University, literally next door to the Lone Star Cafe. Mm-hmm. So when the stage door was open and my window was cracked, I heard some amazing music. And the East Village, nowadays you talk about the East Village and it was, rental bikes and hipsters. But I was off the corner from Stromboli Pizza, which was downstairs from the Bowmore bowling lanes. And, you'd see Marky Ramone or the Beastie Boys in there. Ricky Powell was selling frozen lemonade in Washington Square Park. Where the comedian there who would sit in the fountain and tell dirty jokes, and he was on Miami Vice and DC Cab, kid named Charlie Barnett. It was gritty and real and broke and perfect. and you learn street smart. At the same time, my mom and dad divorced. My mom moved to LA because she had showbiz dreams, right? And we lived in the Valley because we weren't wealthy. So I got to experience LA before everyone became a total jerk, like that Boogie Nights, Chips. The sun was out, the traffic was low, and everyone kind of was just happy to be there. LA. So I got like 2 sides of 2 places they're dead forever.
Gotcha.
That's true.
It's pretty cool.
That's true.
It's cool, but then you realize that's kind of why I love Philly. I was 10 years into DC, and I hate DC isn't a place. It's somewhere you go to work for a while.
Yeah.
There's a townhome involved. There's an assigned parking spot. There's a chain restaurant. It's not real. Right. People are like your friends there. There's a cell phone, and people will not show up when they invite you somewhere. It's decent, what I mean? So, I never felt at home there. I take dates. I really like to Baltimore because they had a Little Italy, and then I got the opportunity to come to Philly, and Philly just felt like New York did at one point.
Yeah, it's kind of like a small New York. There's a lot of things. How long you been in Philly?
Oh, wait. I got assigned to
Oh.
the medical board. No, wait. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It got me here. I loved it.
What's
I
your
still
favorite?
love it. I'm still in the city.
What's your favorite cheesesteak place? You were talking about cheesesteaks earlier.
Cafe Carmelo in
Cafe
the
Carmel?
Northeast.
Oh, okay.
If you don't know it, now you do.
I think I've heard of it. I haven't been there though.
I'll put the Pepsi challenge up against Angelo's any day. And by the way, money's where my mouth is. My friend Maggie, we go back a couple decades. She's New Orleans homicide. I don't know if you watched the first 48, the female with the tattoos.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, she came to her. She's kind of half a widow, and her man, who was a New Orleans police lieutenant, he's from Bethlehem. So when she comes back for the anniversary, she'll stay at my house. She'll borrow my car. She'll go to Bethlehem, pay her respects.
Cool.
The last time she was in town, we did the Pepsi challenge. We did a bang bang. We went from Angelo's. We went from Carmela's to Angelo's. Tried both of them.
Nice.
She bona fide it. It's Carmela's.
There we
Angelo's
go.
is good.
Gotta get up there and try it finally. Yeah.
Come on up. Yeah, the Northeast is tremendous.
I like the Northeast. Good people up there.
Philly Chris, are those fighting words? Do you have a difference in opinion here? You're gonna host
No, not at all. I'm really not too particular. I do tend to
Frank Oliveri's in my Masonic lodge.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So I should have said Pat's.
Yeah, right.
I was just going to mention Pat's. Actually, I was just there the other night. That's when I ran into Bam from Jackass, the Bam.
One of our listeners says Cafe Carmelo is about a half a mile from me, so he's gonna have to take you up on that.
Yeah.
I
was surprised he hasn't taken me.
Tell Joe I sent you.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I took 2 weeks ago. I was in there because I have another buddy staying with me because I got to stay with him in July. He's Carbonetti. He's Carbonetti de Mapoli. He hunts the mafia. Well, the Camorra. Let's be real. We call it the mafia. It actually depends on where you are. He's in Naples.
There
So
that's where my family's from.
He came stateside, and for a couple of weeks. Kids live in DC, so I took him. That's where I took him for the cheesesteak, and all the owner's family speaks Italian. They come over. I was like, this is real. You're not getting this at Jim's.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So, when you growing up in New York and California, these are places that are not exactly known as being strongholds for the Second Amendment, obviously. When was it that you started to get into the Second Amendment and get exposed to firearms? Was it through law enforcement?
Yeah. I actually was issued a gun before I bought a gun.
Wow.
Because it was New York.
So it was NYPD or?
No, I was in an armed capacity with NYPD because I was actually too young to carry at that point. So 18, fresh out of high school, I became a summer special in Long Beach.
Okay.
New York. Long Beach is that first town on the Nassau side into Long Island. Mm-hmm. So, you get this little bridge with the Atlantic Beach Bridge. Long Beach is on one side, Far Rockaway, Queens, which is the militarized zone. The militarized zone on the shore is on the other side of the bridge. And this cool little town, we used to go, in the summer in my senior year of high school. They had summer specials like you see in Jersey. So that was my first shield, my first foray. And then at the same time, I was an auxiliary in Manhattan for college credit while I was at John Jay doing my undergrad. Mm. And as soon as I hit 20, I was testing for the NYPD. That was the year Giuliani came in and changed the requirements. Mm. So it was 20 with a high school diploma when I took the test and scored like a 98, right?
Wow.
And then he came in and made it 22 with 60 credits.
Oh,
wow. And I went, crap. What do I do? And the Federal Protective Service was hiring because of the First World Trade Center bomber trials at the time.
Right.
Because Mary Jo White, who was then the U.S. attorney under Clinton, she said, I want all foreign terrorists tried in New York because we have the expertise to try it here. Not thinking, that would make it a bigger target, which we later found out. Mm. And that's how that started. That's how my career started. I did 2.5 years on that job, working on a detail with the marshals and the NYPD. And then I went to DC because an idiot wants to go kick indoors in an even more struggling city. But it was a culture shock. You come from a city with 40,000 cops and a mayor who was a U.S. attorney who, was all about the job.
Right.
And then you go to, you basically go to The Wire. Baltimore and Washington are sister cities. It was the same situation. Marion Barry hired anyone with a pulse for his, both his stints as mayor. Remember, he came back. He was the getting locked up, pre-crack video.
Mm.
And then when he got out of jail, he ran and won again and turned out. Swear to God. Only in Washington. Because other people think of Washington, and this happens to me all the time. People go, "Oh, DC is so beautiful. I love going there. I take my kids there. We go to Smithsonian." I go, "That's not the city.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to federally controlled areas, U.S.
Right.
Park Police and the Capitol Police.
Right.
There's more U.S. Capitol Police officers, and if you wanted to get into January 6th, we can. But there's more U.S. Capitol Police officers than there are Seattle police officers.
Wow.
No kidding.
So that's one neighborhood in a 28 square mile city versus a 500,000 person city, the biggest one in the Northwest.
It's a big difference.
That's a huge difference. So when people say like DC, they're going to places where, and the irony is now because they're not prosecuting a lot of crime down there, it's bleeding into those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Georgetown, DuPont, Capitol Hill.
Right. Yeah, it's changing. It's changing.
But I didn't get to work that. They stuck my ass in Anacostia. I literally had a murder on my first day.
Wow. Really? Oh, wow.
My field training officer dumped me at a scene. You watch movies and there's always like 15 cops milling around with notebooks and cameras.
Right.
No, it was me alone in an apartment with a woman who got shot by her at-large baby daddy.
That's crazy. No. And this is your first day?
My first day. And I just sit with her for like 2.5 hours because DC only has one meat wagon. Wow. So after the scenes process and the detectives leave, you might be waiting until that guy frees up to come pick up the stiff.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Are you thinking at that point, I immediately regret this decision?
Right. I kind of actually started regretting it in the academy.
Wow.
Oh, really?
They didn't do laterals. And why is because they started announcing that they were going to do laterals literally as I was ending 7 months in their academy. I'm like, oh, great. You really had your shit together. But that culture shock hits you in the head because, there are certain jurisdictions and there's a lot of them. And unfortunately, Philly wasn't one and it's becoming one. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of jurisdictions out there where good enough's just good enough. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I supposed to curse?
Sorry. I was just making a note for the producers.
Because it goes on the regular waves tomorrow.
Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. We'll make it FCC friendly before that.
You got to dump out of it.
Please be yourself, though. Please be yourself.
I am not like this on Don Stensland. Sorry, guys.
No, don't worry about it. It's all good.
We're hanging with the unfiltered version. That's all. Ultimately,
so it's one of those situations where they have bare minimum. We didn't even have air support when I got there. Mm-hmm. We used to have to call the U.S. Park Police for air support. Barry sold our helicopters.
Really? Just get rid of the helicopters.
Yeah, I mean, I have a spirit animal who taught me, he teaches me how to be a better journalist named Charlie LeDuff, who's got a Pulitzer. He's out of Detroit. And we sometimes we'll just have a few drinks and talk. If I'm not in Detroit, we'll do it on the phone. But he's hilarious, man, because that's another one of those huge cities and it's just barely getting by.
Right.
For no other reason than a complete lack of political will to fix it.
Right.
That's the truth. Now, eventually we get to your horror story. How do we get there from DC? You ended up being with the federal government after that?
So, no, this is how this happens. And we might as well just launch right into it. I don't want to jump your play. But I'm a cop in DC and I'm a Black Cloud guy. I volunteer for every terrible thing that's happening. So, we're talking the civil disturbance unit. That's the guys who go out with the crowds and the protests, There's some great pictures of me floating around the internet wearing, the helmet and all the pads and the two-sided stick and the shield,
Right.
going into, headlong into crowds, gas munitions, things like that. But we also worked the presidential overtime. We worked, you have to be CDU certified to get a lot of the movies. If they're filming a movie in town, The West Wing, Minority Report, all that good stuff. And then I was in 60. I was doing jump outs. I was working power shift. I was doing all that, that young, dumb, full of what stuff, to go be a police in a city like that. And I was working midnight intel in what later became the Fusion Center. So I'm pulling all kinds of things. And a guy in a city paper, which is the free weekly paper in DC. We don't have one in Philly anymore. We used to. Actually ended up talk about a tale of redemption. Up until it folded its print edition, I was writing for the weekly. I was doing covers.
Oh wow.
Breaking stories for the weekly here. But the free weeklies, right? Music in the front, hookers in the back. It's not breaking news.
The good old days.
Yeah, and this guy wrote this piece about cops in DC. It was just a smear piece, but he named one of my former Vice Squad compatriots in 6D, and basically accused the guy of digitally raping a suspect in the street, like pulling his pants down and finger. Like, it's just most outlandish stuff. And of course it was uncorroborated. So I'm like, curiosity killed the cop. What's this dude's? Because usually when you have one of those, it's not, nowadays it's just straight bias. But 20 years ago, it was usually because the guy had a run-in. So I punched him up because I wanted to see if the dude had some kind of run-in with the cops. And then I put we had a Yahoo message group at the time. This is way before social media. And in that message group, which was a members only group for cops in the district, I said, look, this guy lives here in this area, and he's obviously got a problem with us. So, enforce your law, enforce your tickets. Don't get caught out there. You know what I mean? So, and he made a complaint to Chief Ramsey. Yeah, the same guy who ended up coming to Philly after I moved here. And basically said it was an attack of the free press and that I was doxing him and all this good stuff. And they tried to fire me, but they didn't have a social media policy. This is 2002, right?
Mm-hmm.
B, other than running the guy in the system to see if he had a problem, I didn't really do anything. I just told everyone to, it was tongue in cheek of telling everyone to mind their P's and Q's. So the termination that they proposed got overturned. And in the interim, because what happens in DC when they overturn an unlawful termination is they lose the paperwork in the stack at the Public Employees Relations Board that's supposed to ratify it. So years go by and I'm waiting to get back. Well, Homeland Security actually hires me as an inspector, gives me a secret clearance. Wow. And puts me in charge of doing threat assessments at one of the teams doing threat assessments for the entire Baltimore, Richmond, Washington corridor.
Oh, wow.
It's like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And the thing about those is conditional carry because you're a regulatory inspector. So I had a Virginia permit. I lived in Virginia, never lived in the district. And I had my side hustle at a bar, nightclub, restaurant. And I was there one night working and I intervened and the guy tried to beam one of my bouncers in the head with a pint glass and I disarmed him. I put him to the ground. And that's when all his boys jumped me and tried to grab me and all this. And I backed them off. Badge here, gun here. Back up, picked up the guy, brought him across the street, sat him on the curb, called the cops myself for assistance.
Yeah.
And guess who got arrested that night?
The guy with the gun.
The guy, as Mike always says, the
guy with the gun gets arrested.
And then they try to say, oh, there's probable cause you assaulted. At the end of the day, the only charge there was the gun. And when we tried to break that down to a misdemeanor UAUF, they added, they said they'd plea out no time. and added a misdemeanor false personation charge because I used a Homeland Security shield as a police shield.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. And here's the irony. After that, I get the affidavit from the original dude that I never laid a hand on him.
Mm-hmm.
And the district was still forced to reinstate me retroactively. So we try to get a writ of quorum nobis, big legal term, Mike will explain it to you later. But we try to get a writ of quorum nobis in front of the DC Superior Court saying, hey, guys, this whole case was hinged upon this guy's right to carry, and he was a de jure police officer that night.
Mm-hmm.
He was reinstated, and he was supposed to be on the job that night with 218 privileges. They didn't hear it. They just, because it's DC and there's no local.
Oh, so that's why Leosa didn't apply, because you weren't officially reinstated, is what they said?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
because I was always wondering
DC to this day, as we sit, DC is still one of those jurisdictions where Leosa is in question.
Because it's not a state, right? Because it's not a state, right?
Well, it's not a state, but you have to understand, forever, like when I was on the job, let's say you retired, you have to do the entire 25 years with the district to get retirement credentials.
Right.
Otherwise, you were just a resignation. And it wasn't until 5-10 years ago that they started giving a separate, what they call firearms identification card for Leosa in the district.
Right.
Because only an eighth of the job lives in the district. So what they used to do was like the okie doke. They used to tell you to go get your permit from Fairfax or Arlington or Montgomery or wherever. And then when you try to use it in the city, they'd say it doesn't apply.
It's so ridiculous.
That's why they got sued. It wasn't Heller. Heller was the tip of the spear. But really the one that mattered in the district was Grace. So Grace in Pink Pistols. That's why you'll never hear me saying anything homophobic. Is Grace in Pink Pistols was the real seminal gun case, not just in DC, nationally. Why? Because it doesn't talk about keeping it in your house.
Right.
It talks about packing it concealed on the street with a permit.
How did you get through that, Ben? Like, what was your mental state? Like, I can't imagine being in your shoes with the credentials and the background, the history you have, and then all of a sudden, after doing a good deed, you find yourself in that situation. How did you get through that?
I mean, it
would drive some people crazy. Yeah.
I still get trolled.
Okay. Do you really?
Oh, constant. Because and I'll get into that in a second. But your question was how I got through. And look, I'm not going to offer platitudes like, oh, faith. I'm not saying faith's great. If you have faith, God bless you. Initially, it was strictly survival instinct. I needed to pay my bills. I needed to get out of this guy's basement. I was living in a guy's basement because I had no job, right? And it just, you slowly put the pieces back together. It started, I was selling cars. And then I realized after the thing was adjudicated and I wasn't given any time, the record is terrible, but they transferred my probationary sentence to Virginia, where literally the probation officer on the first meet goes, "This isn't a crime here. Don't do anything and I won't see you ever again."
Right.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was, because I'm sure he's heard about it before, being right across the river. So it was one of those situations where, I went from selling cars to, I got back to consulting. And then I got an engagement with an Israeli firm that wanted to project manage contracts doing Homeland Security technology, credentialing technology in U.S. law enforcement and fire. And they didn't know how to speak the language, not just literally, obviously. Every Israeli speaks English. But our system is really different and convoluted compared to theirs, where they just have a national police, Shin Bet, which is all their federal law enforcement rolled into one. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's just, it's a lot easier to sell those technologies there than it is here. So they gave me a job and I got my feet back under me. And I went from there because I worked, I got contracts in Los Angeles, again, commuting back to LA. here in the Southeast Task Force. So all, not just Philly, but the entire 5-county region, Columbus, Ohio, it was pretty easy to get the confidence again to apply for jobs like the one I had with the medical board. And by the time I did, and I had the 6-month vetting process to get that job, I was reinstated. I had started, people were starting in Heller had been ruled on by then. So it was really just a waiting game to see how ludicrous, even from a left, the American Board of Internal Medicine is a left-leaning organization.
Sure.
But, you can't look at all the credentials I have and go, you got popped for carrying a gun? I'm a 2-time Olympic shooter for the police department.
Right.
The very job that locked me up used to send me to, they sent me to Cocoa Beach, Florida for 2 weeks. And literally the entire length of the games, I had maybe a day and a half of shooting. And I got to live on the
Did
beach.
you know anybody who you had to deal with during the process because of your history?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
During the criminal case, did you know anybody that you were dealing with over there?
No, well, that's the real pain in the ass is the officer who, put me in cuffs and the sergeant who approved it were both taken aside by the first officer on the scene when I called 911, who was in my platoon in the academy.
Oh, wow. Really?
And that officer, black guy, DC guy, former housing cop who transferred over, he went, that guy's a police. That guy's the real deal. You can't be locking him up.
Mm-hmm.
They did it anyhow. And because there's, you want to get into this, we'll get into this. Under Ramsey and Lanier, who were the two chiefs, Lanier was after Ramsey, but there was an incentivized structure, especially in the 1st and 3rd districts and 2nd districts, are the ones where you were more likely to have someone, get guns off the street, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got guns off the street, but there's a big difference than pulling a stolen or illegally trafficked weapon out of a drug dealer's waistband at 14th and T, which is an open air drug market in Anacostia, versus what they were doing in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd districts, which is, I went to the preliminary hearing. If you don't think my case is going to light a fire under your ass, I'm at the preliminary. The prelims all happen in chunks because we don't have a local court. We have a federal court that serves a local city.
Right.
So they kind of schedule you by officer and district. The guy who locked me up, the case on the docket before me in his prelim chunk was an active duty Coast Guard boarding officer who had his weapon in his glove box, cutting through the district. 395 cuts through from his station in Maryland to his house in Virginia. He gets stopped for traffic, tells the cop because he's responsible.
Discloses. No. You said because he's responsible.
Right.
It's because he's stupid and doesn't know his rights.
Hey, I'm breaking the law right now. Just want to let you know.
Because let's face it, Fairfax County, where we lived, and PG County, Charles County, Oxon Hill, the Coast Guard station on the river, they're gonna see you're in BDUs and go, hey, have a go.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They ain't even gonna stop you.
Right.
You're part of the solution. You're not part of the problem. So, yeah, this is the kind of, there was an incentive structure for getting guns off the street. They didn't really care whose guns. And let's face it, if you're balancing a narrative, guys like me, it isn't personal.
Right.
It fits because you have a lot of one thing and then the occasional idiot who forgets they had their weapon on their hip with a Virginia permit.
Mm-hmm.
But my case didn't get pled out.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What's the worst part about all this is it taking place in DC because you have cases like Shaneen Allen who ended up in New Jersey. I don't know if you're familiar.
I know well.
Their offer was 7.5 years on that one. Fortunately, Knappen was able to get that taken care of. And you have other people who end up in Jersey who ended up with pardons from Governor Christie when he was in office, people who were what I call accidental criminals, right?
Yeah.
They didn't do anything wrong, they didn't harm anybody, they weren't trying to do anything illegal, but
How
for a
about
mere
the
possessory offense.
Burlington County case with the Pennsylvania corrections officer
Yep,
with
very
his
familiar with
family in
that
the
one as
car?
well. Very
Now,
familiar with
and the
that one as
irony
well.
is, the New Jersey corrections officers do have carry.
Right, because they're covered under Leoza, they got the
Yeah.
authority of arrest. And
Which is something, by the way, on Barletta's committee. That's how we got the corrections endorsement, because it makes no sense for New York and New Jersey, the bordering states, to have peace officer status
right.
and our guys just to be guards. If you ever worked inside, it's real work. So for these guys to get treated like they're somehow less than their peers right across the river, it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And you were talking earlier about how there's not really a consistency or any uniformity with law enforcement in Pennsylvania and the difference between the sheriffs and the constables. There's actually a case out of New York where they deemed a constable to be covered under Leoza,
Yeah.
who is carrying out there. But a corrections officer doesn't have the authority of arrest. So it's really all over the map.
Which, I mean, it's a two-pronged approach. One has to be, and I would love to look. If I'm not a jerk about it. If Shapiro wants these policies, we've got them drafted, and I'm coming. Because if you look at our committee, it's not partisan. Mike Bresnan from 22 served as paramedics in Kensington. It was the corrections officers. It was me. It was the Sheriff's Association. So we have great policy that I would love to see come to fruition. I don't care if it's an R or a D brings it, but yeah, I mean, the first step has to be the agencies need to be recognized. If you're doing the job, again, that same correction officer, if he's got to take a prisoner to the hospital, has a weapon on his hip.
Right.
So what are you saying? He's obviously certified, trained to carry that weapon under the Pennsylvania the Constat. So the fact that it suddenly changes when they punch out, even though there's now a federal law saying these guys are at risk, it makes absolutely no sense.
No sense.
And that's actually why in New York, in New Jersey, there's a law. I mean, by the way, they work outside the wall. The best gang intelligence in New York City comes from the corrections department, not from the NYPD.
Because they see it on the inside.
Yeah, they got them all in one place. You might as well listen.
Right.
So it's one of those things where you're really shooting yourself in the foot by making these guys less than.
Yeah.
Because honestly, there are certain political chits to be won. The state police have the ear of the governor, and they don't want to cede that to any other group.
Now, Ben, I would say that you have a very unique perspective when it comes to policy and law enforcement, because obviously you served, but you had a different perspective in living through this nightmare horror story of abuse of government and authority and law enforcement and the courts and the quote unquote justice system. Do you think that that's why you have a unique perspective on this stuff and it allows you the ability to draft better policies than others who only have one side or the other?
Yes. And for many reasons. You can get spiritual for a minute by saying, your blessings may be hidden. So if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have learned how to do global investigations for an NGO, right? Or learn about, academic and financial services and healthcare compliance. Because when you're pushing security and safety, groups like them, they look from compliance. They don't look from, the 911 came in and I have to go serve. So that's not where they're coming from, right? So had I not been shafted, I would not have been forced to learn. But I've diversified those skill sets. So I still believe in best practices learned during the crack explosion, having come from those eras when it comes to public safety. While at the same time, I advocate. I last week spoke with Stand Together, and I spoke with Manhattan Institute and Heritage on these criminal justice reform issues. And the problem with criminal justice reform, having had an injustice occur to me, and not sitting around picking my scab, blaming the man for it, right? I pled out. I did what I did. It was, to me, not a crime, and then it was overturned. So we have to talk about retroactivity. But at the end of the day, I'm in this situation. So sitting around blaming somebody isn't going to get it done. So what we have to do is look at criminal justice reform from the lens of record reform. That's the phrase I coined. Because that is record reform is criminal justice reform, and it's risk-based. Someone who's proven and is subjected to an investigation and willing to prove that they've redeemed themselves and are a positive, constructive member of society who won't do it again. And the other side of it is police reform and bail reform, which is what the progressive prosecutor movement is putting out there. And the problem with that is anyone who's taken an undergraduate criminology class will tell you, if you don't interrupt that cycle of criminality, they will graduate to worse crimes.
Right.
So by saying no to drug use, drug sales, retail theft, prostitution, we're seeing direct correlation to a rise in murders, carjackings, and the like, robberies. And it's not just here: Chicago, DC, Baltimore, LA, San Francisco. Pretty much, if you look at any of these cities that had a Soros installed progressive prosecutors, those are the places with astronomical crime increases. To include ones in states where you wouldn't see it, like Austin. Austin, I was there when it was funky. Now it's San Jose Part 2.
Really?
Yeah.
It has gotten that bad.
Yeah, it's because they're Californians.
You mentioned Kensington earlier. Have you been through there recently?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
What are your thoughts on that whole thing?
It's not changed much over the years. It's gotten progressively worse because there's an air of permissiveness. The thing that's sad, my last piece in Broad and Liberty was about how special purpose agencies can't keep up. And the two I'm using for that article were Temple, being in the heart of North Philly, and SEPTA. And half of SEPTA's subway workload is the Market Frankfurt line, which is the heroin highway.
Right.
You could get on take it to Kensington, Somerset, Kensington, and Allegheny, get your dope, get back on the train, shoot up. So a lot of what you're seeing at K&A, K&S, Girard, it's in the presence of a SEPTA posted police officer.
Yeah.
In the car with the lights running.
Right.
And all this stuff's just happening in front of this poor schlub, and he's not allowed to do anything. And a lot of it is not because, the late, great Chief Nistel is the one telling him not to act. It's because they know if you're off the street for 3 hours processing that, no one's on that post. You don't have the manpower to back your post up anymore. And if you do, the case isn't going to get prosecuted anyhow.
Gotcha.
So you're basically, it's the flip side of the coin to what we're doing at the border right now. Charlie, the reporter from Detroit I told you about, Charlie Duff, went down there with a cameraman, went into Mexico and crossed over the river with the migrants, with the camera running. Like, that's journalism, man. If you're willing to go, like he did the whole thing. Like he went over to the brokers and the coyotes, and he pretended he was an illegal.
I want to see that.
Wow.
I haven't seen that.
And the thing that's the big takeaway from that, and this is why I'm putting the parallel with what you're seeing in Kensington, Philadelphia, and a lot of other American cities right now, Wilmington. You have a situation where the border patrolmen have been instructed to become Uber drivers. So they're not apprehending and returning.
Right.
Or apprehending and running them in Epic to see if they're trafficking. Epic is the El Paso Information Center, which is the database used by DEA and Customs. So it's one of those situations where, they're just corralling people and processing them into these like Welcome to America centers, which is not their MOS.
Right.
And that's why things are this bad right now, because it's on a local level exactly what we're seeing with the Philadelphia Police Department. They're not allowed to make traffic stops to the extent they used to.
Sure.
Traffic stops are like the hinge pin on all the good stuff, if you're just a basic street cop.
Right. No, it's a free for all. I mean, I'm in the city regularly, and you got the ATVs and the four wheelers and the motorcycles, and
It's a great example.
driving down the sidewalk, and
Their literal presence.
hmm
It's an untagged off-road vehicle. Their literal presence is illegal. That's
right.
probable cause right there.
Yeah, right.
Do not stop.
No, there's hundreds of them.
Not allowed
Blowing through the red lights. It's crazy. It's like a Mad Max situation down there.
Because God forbid you try to, the guy pulls a gun and you end up shooting them in the back.
Right.
And then you end up getting indicted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I feel for the cops down there. They can't really do their job. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem.
Mhm.
And I'm in Philly, only by a few blocks, but I'm in Philly. And I used to be actually in Port Richmond.
Oh, okay.
But we got Krasner. There was like an invisible wall on Aramingo, and everything east Aramingo was like a union guy. All my neighbors were in a local, and they didn't tolerate any of the crap. And then once Krasner got in, all the neck tattoos started wandering around looking for stuff to steal.
Mm.
There was a shooting at the playground across the street, and we cashed out while we had equity.
Oh, wow. Yeah, probably a good move.
Wow.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Are chest tattoos acceptable?
I mean, look, I'm up for any tattoo as long as you can put on the suit afterwards and go get a job interview.
Right,
these guys with neck tattoos and head tattoos and ear tattoos. You're like, hey, man, you forgot. I'm stealing a joke from Todd Berry. Hey, man, you forgot to not do that. This application for the library has been denied.
It's true. Other than like musician or professional athlete, if you're not one of those, you're gonna have a tough time.
Yeah, it's the irony. I got a buddy out west who met Post Malone, and he's like, man, he's the greatest guy I ever met. And I looked at him because I listen to real old music,
Yeah.
So I looked at him and I'm like, he looks like a scumbag. And the joke is, I looked into the guy, and apparently he's a really great guy.
A heart of gold, Second Amendment supporter.
But he forgot to not do that.
Right.
He forgot.
Like Pitbull is of this era, but he wears a suit, like a $3,000 suit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's funny.
In Miami Heat, right there. It's
Yeah. Ben, you've been very generous with your time. I don't want to be. I don't want to take advantage. So ultimately, I was just want to, by capping it off, how did you end up in journalism after all of this?
Oh, you know what? That's a great story, and I'm really glad you said that. So I'm in my second term as director of investigation at the American Board of Internal Medicine, and I made the largest medical cheating scandal in American history. And I started getting trolled because when doctors get caught doing bad stuff, they don't like it. They become very litigious. Sure. So I started getting trolled by anonymous accounts about my background. And it really started screwing my Google up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the only way to fix bad Google is by putting good Google out there.
Okay.
And I started writing. And my stuff got picked up by a lot of local outlets at first, cross country. And it was stuff about guns and active shooters and security and emergency management. And then I became a regular contributor to The Hill before it became the smear Trump campaign. A lot of things changed after that election. From The Hill to Newsmax.
Okay.
But the amount of local scandals here, I just had to start writing local. So I went to Broad and Liberty. And when I have something national, your co-hosts on that station, whether it be Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, I have the rogue prosecutor vertical on the Reader's Pass. So go get that Reader's Pass at Daily Wire.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I've written some stuff for them. But Broad and Liberty is my favorite place to write because it is think tank journalism. City Journal has New York, Broad and Liberty has Philly. And we get deep. And so, it was basically originally just a way to save my reputation, and it's turned into stuff where I now have sources. And the credibility of, Stu Bykowski calls me, Ralph Cipriano calls me, Charlie LaDuff calls me. And these are guys that have been doing it for 45 years. So I'm kind of just honored to be in their presence because there's very few real journalists left who are willing to put a little shoe leather out there. And now the best thing I have is the trust of whistleblowers within, the police and the DAs. In some cases, even the criminals who will call, drop a dime and tell me, look, this is crazy. This case. And
Wow.
I'll always write about it.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Did you ever, as a kid or anything, think of journalism? Was that
even as a cop? See that, and that's the irony is now I love the paperwork. I love to articulate a case. I love to draft policy. I love to draft opinion, and I love to get a story out there. If I had that prowess as a street cop, I'd be commissioner. Because I spend most of my time trying to avoid paperwork.
Gotcha.
Where do you go for news for yourself? Just out of curiosity, where do you
it's a smattering. I go all over the place. So steady diet. I have briefings, so we're talking like your aggregators, whether it be Morning Wire, whether it be 1440, MSN, and then aside from the aggregators, I'll pick up whatever's on Big Trial, Broad and Liberty locally. I'll pick up whatever's on the Daily Wire. I'll pick up whatever. Honestly, I have a feed. Things I'm following.
Okay, cool. My favorite is CNN.
It's fun fiction. I mean, honestly, I do check in with what the counterpoint is whenever I'm
right.
writing.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, I could take the counterpoint up and turn it on itself.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that they don't realize. There's a very short attention span on the left side of the aisle. They don't realize the stuff they're crowing about now will become our talking point next year.
Yeah, that happens a lot, actually. Right.
Yeah.
So, and the really, really cool thing about writing in this age versus the old print days, you used to just have sources and stick them somewhere and wait for the other shoe to drop. Now you could link your sources right in the article. And this is why they don't target me. We've got a couple of them will target me. But they can't target me a lot because a lot of the source links are going back to the Inquirer or the New York Times or Washington Post. Like, you cared about this stuff last year. You cited these stats.
Right.
Well, is this racist, or did Roland Fryer from Harvard, an African-American Harvard professor, do a peer-reviewed study showing that there's no systemic racism in the police department? So this is the kind of stuff that we need to be more well-versed. We need to stop chasing a talking point. It's the one thing I hated about Trump. He was my great hope for 4 years, because at the end of the day, I had like 5 people in his administration trying to get me that pardon. But, I had people in that White House tell me, it's frustrating when you spend 6 months on a policy and get the stakeholders and the votes in line in the caucus, and then he tweets something from the toilet at 5 a.m. and it's no longer the talking point. Like, whatever you did for the last 6 months, no one wants to talk about anymore because he said something silly.
Gotcha.
Right.
It is fun as an observer, though.
Yep, that's true.
Well, Ben, tell everybody how can they, if they want to keep up with you on Daily Wire and Broad and Liberty, they just go to the website.
Yeah,
is there anywhere they could follow you personally?
All my stuff on Twitter. Yeah, well, Elon's there, so it's not evil anymore. But at Public Safety SME, subject matter expert. So all one word, or just search my name and it'll take you there. But when you write for a couple different outlets, you just want to subscribe, and then whenever it drops, I'll post it. You can read it.
At Public Safety SME on Twitter. I'm posting it in the comments over here, so everybody who's checking us out on YouTube as opposed to over the airwaves can just see that in the comments.
Yeah.
And if you are listening over the airwaves, you need to check out the full episode on YouTube, so that way you can check that out.
With the one curse word.
With all, you can see the one curse word. If you watch on YouTube, you can see the one.
And now that we're in the Rogue Hour, I got to know what you're drinking over there.
I don't drink Protestant whiskey.
Okay.
This is John Jameson's.
It's
Very
apple
nice.
juice. It's apple
Very
juice.
nice.
Jameson, so I try to play the I'm Jewish Italian. I'm New Yorker, right? I walked into this bar in Capitol Hill every night after night, and it's Tony T, who now owns the Pug. So if you're in DC, go to the Pug on 8th Street. Tony T is one of these shanty PG County Irish cats with the white beater and the shorts, even it's December and it's freezing out. And I walk in like, hey, get me a Sambuca. Trying to play that New York thing up.
Right.
And he'd take a double glass and put Jameson in it and slide it across the bar and go, that's how he makes Sambuca here, you bastard. So ever since, this is my Sambuca.
That's wonderful.
Funny.
That's good.
That is great. Well, Ben, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. We obviously wish you the very best, and we'll be keeping an eye on you. We hope that you'll come back on and join us again sometime, because I had a lot of fun.
Anytime, guys. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. Ben Manis, ladies and gentlemen, check him out. Don't forget to follow him on Twitter, Public Safety SME, at Public Safety SME. All right.
Pleasure meeting him. Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Very cool.
Great to interview him.
Yeah.
Great guy to chat. Just a wealth of information, and what a story, man.
I can't imagine going through that. It's just, crazy. All these crazy stories that you hear about, people doing the right thing. And, that's why I have such little faith in our justice system in so many ways anymore. It's really not that just.
Yeah. It's a lot of that going around. Unfortunately, we see those stories all too often. The tough part about his case, like we were talking about, is where it happened, because it makes it that much more difficult to get relief.
Yeah.
He needs a presidential pardon.
That's great. Right. That's really unique. It's too bad. I wonder why Trump didn't pardon him.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. And there's so many different legal issues when it comes to that stuff, and constitutionally, and
right.
Interesting.
No, it's too bad it happened to him. Good guy though. He's funny too. Good sense of humor.
Yeah. Great guy. A lot of fun to talk to. I'm glad that we were able to get him on, and appreciate him taking the time to be here with us. So I did have to mention something. Obviously, we do a lot on YouTube, and this has been weighing on me. Have you subscribed to the YouTube premium account where you pay for it?
Have I?
Yes.
I have not.
Okay. So it gets rid of ads, is one of the main features. It gets rid of ads, and then you can also do other things on your phone while the YouTube video is continues to run. So if you're listening to music on YouTube, let's say, you can do other things on your phone without the music stopping. You ever do that, where you put on music and then you go to look at your text message or whatever?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then the music just stops.
It is very annoying, which I'm sure is why they do that, so you subscribe.
So you'll pay. Well, that's not what got me to do it ultimately. It wasn't the fact that you can listen to music. It's an added bonus. But I've found that the ads on YouTube were so annoying. There were two ads in particular that they beat me into submission.
Is that right?
I don't know if it's just me who's getting these ads, or if other people are also getting these ads, but there were two companies in particular that have beat me into submission to where I will pay to never have to see them.
No kidding. Again. I got to hear what these are.
Well, first one, I wish I would have spoken to Michael Knight about this. Maybe we can have him on again sometime.
Yeah, we got to have him on. That was great.
There's an ad for V-Shred. Have you ever seen this?
V-Shred. I'm not sure I have. I'm not sure. What is it?
This guy, he's well built and he's good looking, and he's like hanging from a thing, and he's like, that ain't how you lose weight. And he starts talking about the different body types and this quiz and everything like that.
Is that the guy that says you don't do cardio? He's always saying
it's not heavy cardio. Right. CrossFit. That ain't how you lose weight.
I know who you're talking about.
I was like, dude, if I have to see another V-Shred commercial,
they must spend a ton of money on advertising, because now that you say it, I know
ridiculous amount of money. And I'm sure a lot of people end up signing up because, he's got the secret to losing weight.
And I don't have to do any cardio. I
no cardio. Greg Doucette, who I spoke about last week with Michael Knight, because he actually put out a video criticizing Michael for something that I think was unfair criticism.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
But Greg Doucette did this video where he totally slaughtered V-Shred.
Oh, really?
Like totally ripped him apart.
We got to find that and play that on the show.
I couldn't stop laughing watching this.
We should play it.
You can type in Greg Doucette V-Shred.
That's funny.
But that ad, the V-Shred ads were just killing me. And then there's this other one about some T-shirt. Do you get this one too?
Tell me what this one is. I'm not sure.
It's some shirt. I don't even remember what it's called because I get so infuriated watching these ads or listening to these ads, depending on where I am, that I don't even want to know what the company's called. I have no desire to buy the shirt because the
Right.
ads are so annoying.
Oh, is it the shirts that are fit a little different from men?
Right.
Oh,
yeah. It
right.
makes your muscles look bigger and your belly look
And it's
smaller.
always the guys like me, kind of with the dad bod, and then it sort of makes you look like, you got.
But there's this commercial where they're in an office and he's like, Johnson, you're fired. Why? It's because your shirt. And he's like, oh, this guy can't even read. Or whatever. It's like, if I got to hear one of these shirt commercials one more time. And so also they beat me into submission between V-Shred and between. So one of our listeners says that he gets the V-Shred commercial. So annoying. So annoying. This mythical secret how to lose weight.
DeFi's in such good shape, you shouldn't get those commercials.
But there's another one where he's like, what do you think I'm eating for dinner? Is it salad or is it pizza? And he's like,
is this Russ's diet
pizza?
commercial?
And people are like, oh, I could eat pizza and I could look like that guy. Let me sign up.
Right.
How stupid do you have to be, right?
That is pretty. Yeah, the ads are bad now. There's so many.
They convince people that they've got this knowledge that nobody else has, right?
Right.
They've got this secret knowledge. It's not this, it's not that, it's not cardio, right?
Yeah.
It's not all this other stuff. It's the secret that I can show you how to do it.
No cardio, eat pizza, and get the special shirt, and you'll be fine.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, get this thing. Do the V-Shred and get the shirt. You'll be good to go.
That's a problem. There's so many gimmicks. Well,
the shirt is the shortcut too, though, right?
It kind of is. It kind of is. You're right.
You're saying, we'll hide your belly if you wear this shirt.
And we're gonna make
you be fat,
right?
And we'll give you this shirt, and you'll be good to go.
Your fat arms are gonna look like muscle.
Yeah, make you look muscular. Right. It's so annoying.
Yeah, there's a lot of marketing in general is so annoying anymore. It's all a bunch of lies.
I want to know if Russ, do you see these ads? Do you get these ads for V-Shred and for this shirt company that I can't remember what it's called?
No, because I was smart enough to get YouTube Premium a long time ago.
All right.
How much is the YouTube Premium?
I don't know. Whatever it was, I didn't think about it for half a second because it was worth never seeing V-Shred or the stupid T-shirt commercial ever again.
I just don't want to give them my money, is why I don't do it. But I mean, I thought about it a few years ago.
Yeah.
But,
well, the prices just went up not that long ago. I believe it was December for the family plan, which is what I have. It's like, I think $25 a month. But you can pay like a year in advance and stuff. And it's like $13 or maybe it went up to 15 for a personal, just one person. A family plan will get you, I think, up to 5.
I guess that's not too bad.
You get ads removed, you get background play, you get YouTube music, and I feel like there's a few other benefits, but I probably don't care that much to know what they are.
Yeah.
We never explained to Ben what mustard was all about.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I bet a lot of our guests are probably like, "What's going on? What is this?"
We got to keep him. We got to keep Ben in suspense so that way he comes back on the show. That's what it's all about.
That was a good conversation. Very interesting guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't realize he was in Philly now.
I wonder if anybody else gets these ads. Nobody else is. Because some people are being shy about it. Oh, Defilant says, I get the soap commercials all the time. The one where they also sell deodorants. Any other commercials any other YouTube commercials that irritate you? Obviously not enough for you to pay to get rid of them.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me think about. Although I do watch the YouTube on the TV sometimes, through like the app on the TV, and it seems like there's more ads even on there.
Huh.
I don't know why.
What are the worst commercials of all time? Whether it's YouTube, whether it's TV, radio, are there any commercials that you've ever heard or seen that made you not want to buy the product? made you say, you know what? I'm never buying the product based on this commercial. It's
think-
so annoying that I can't take it anymore.
I think some of those like as seen on TV commercials are just so ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Remember those? I mean, some of the products they sort of get you for a second.
But
and you're
wait,
like,
there's
yeah,
more.
right, like that sham, the sham wow thing.
You could even have to make a boat made out of duct tape.
Do you not own any paper towels or any towels of any kind? We've got this chamois, I don't want to use the real name, but it's like order now and just think you can wipe off your car and your windows and yourself and never wash the thing and then stuff it back.
I've always wanted to wash my car.
Silly Chris, I feel like you could be in one of those commercials.
But wait, there's
That's
more.
true. You could be the new Bill Mays.
He sounds
Yeah,
like
rest
it.
his
The
soul.
Chop It guy.
Actually, he was pretty. I mean, that guy he was extremely successful. He made
Yeah.
like a crazy amount of money.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do some of those for the show. We'll have
QVC is based out of Westchester, right?
Yeah,
Aren't they?
Mike Rowe. I love Mike Rowe, and he started on QVC. That's one of the big things. And
That's
I like
your
it.
new job, Chris. You could be in QVC.
I would do that. It'd be fun. That'd be
There
fun.
is.
Although here's the problem I would have, and it's the same issue that Mike Rowe had, and he talked about this. It's interesting you bring him up because I really respect when he started doing that whole like dirty jobs thing. He left there because he got so sick of like just trying to convince people to buy stuff they really didn't need, and that's kind of what they're doing.
Wow.
Some of the products are great. I bought things from them, but they're just like pushing stuff, and when you watch it, it's like you sort of get mesmerized into this matrix of unnecessary need.
It's like, no, I need that.
It's like 2 a.m, and you're like, oh yeah,
But order now and the half price. Get out of town.
I want to make sliders in that little tray.
Have you ever bought something like that spur of the moment? Like
I have. Yeah,
You have off the tee. What about in person? Have you ever done? Because CVS is the worst. CVS kills me because they have those as seen.
Oh,
well, they have like an aisle with all the as seen on TV stuff.
That's right, they do. Yeah, actually, I've
and I
seen
ended
that.
up spending like an hour in there, like
Right.
get out of town.
Some of the stuff is kind of cool. I mean, I like gadgets, but
Craziest one I ever bought. I was with my uncle. We were in there at like 2 a.m. for some reason, and they had this like retro hot dog maker where it had the spinny things where you put the hot dogs on and it spins the hot dogs. And we ended up buying that and making hot dogs the old-fashioned way at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's kind of cool though.
That was fun.
I mean, some of the stuff is kind of, it's not like it's that expensive. I think that's their whole marketing thing too. It's like, who really cares if they spend $25 on something and they might use it a couple times? Sort of a novelty. But
have you ever bought one of those things and it just didn't work as you thought it would?
I have, yeah. I'm trying to remember. Like, I think that's why I just kind of, as I got older, didn't really buy that stuff anymore. But there were definitely some times when I came home late at night, threw the TV on, and
I bought one of the machines that you're supposed to use in lieu of a Q-tip. You ever see those machines?
I've seen those. Yeah. Did you get one of those? Yeah,
I did. It did not work.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they look kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like the whole ear cleaner thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You see it on the commercial, and you're like, oh wow, look at that.
It was ineffective.
Yeah.
At least the one that I got.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is. I think I got the one that you're supposed to be able to like make chips in the microwave, and that didn't go very well.
Didn't go very well.
No.
What other strange products? Liberty got any strange products?
I don't think so. I was just gonna comment on jingles. I think there's a fine line between a really annoying jingle and a really good jingle. Like My Pillow comes to mind, where it's like I know what it is, but when it comes on, I have to mute it now because it's just too much.
Really?
It's like overstimulating for me now. And what's funny is that Bed Bath & Beyond is totally shut down, and it's kind of funny how that happened. Like,
I don't know where I'm going to get my Beyond anymore.
But it actually started after. Well, not started. I don't know if this is 100% true. We have to be very cautious. But after they stopped selling My Pillow, I did notice there was like a change. But you know what I mean? Like their sales started kind of going down. I don't know if it was. I think a lot of conservatives boycotted.
Oh,
They stopped selling My Pillow. I think because it was during the Trump era, because he was supporting Trump. I believe that was the reason.
Oh wow!
But also I will say, Cars for Kids.
Oh, I was going to say that. That was next.
Oh, yeah.
That commercial. You've made me not want to donate charity to
Goodness
children, you
gracious.
son of a gun.
I hate kids now.
You got a great cause over here. You blew it. You made it
Right.
so annoying. Oh,
There's a
one
fine
gets me-
line.
That one irritates the daylights out of me.
I will
You know
say I
that one,
agree.
Chris?
Yeah, I remember that one. Yep.
Yeah.
Cars.
I agree with Jeremy about the hairy-legged women.
1877 cars.
Right. Yeah. One.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What about Salerno and Mars? I still remember this.
Salino and Barnes.
Salino and Barnes, or 8888. That one. These like
Was that
lawyer
Attorney
commercials
thing?
stick in my head. A lot of lawyer
Oh,
commercials.
some of those are pretty.
And then
Pretty over
who
the
else?
top.
Oh, Jeremy. I agree with Jeremy that they started putting women with hairy legs on commercials for some reason, or hairy armpits, and to sell shaved razors. I was like, all right, and it's a little nudge.
End of the
And
time.
yes, and they're getting more and more woke. I'll say, like especially on
Mm.
TikTok. Yes, I'm still on TikTok, but I don't know. I just use it for research purposes. But what so I say. But definitely when you're scrolling, there's so many strange commercials, and they're getting more woke and woke. Like they're definitely who's the transgender one?
Oh, the whole Bud Light thing.
Yeah, that one's coming out constantly for Olay.
Oh yeah, I think you sent that to us, didn't you?
Yeah, that one's coming on, and there's this other one similar to what Gary said, which I won't repeat. There's
Okay.
another one that they keep talking about. I'm like, enough already.
No, there's a lot
What
of.
about there was one when I first started hearing Wawa commercials when I lived in New York. I think I was in high school, and there were no Wawa gas stations in New York.
Right.
So I didn't know what they were, but they had this really stupid commercial about it was like the roast pork hoagie. Now, first of all, nobody calls anything a hoagie in New York. I didn't know what a hoagie was when I heard the commercial.
Right. Yeah. Is it probably a submarine or a sub or just a sandwich?
A hero or
Hero, yeah. Up north, a lot of time it was like submarine.
Yeah, and then sub's not used either.
Yeah.
Read some of the comments, guys.
Let's see what we got.
And these are
But that commercial was so annoying. I was like, if I ever run across a Wawa, I'm never using a Wawa.
they said
Of
hoagie.
course, it's like one of my favorite guests. No, it was just the commercial was really annoying.
Oh,
You gotta have a Wawa.
Gotta have a Wawa. It was like really annoying the way they said it.
They are good though. You're
Wawa
right.
is great.
They are great. They're
Oh,
great.
it's one of my favorite guests.
It's a
Yeah.
clean gas station. It's just really good.
Right up there with Sheets.
But that's funny that the
Jesus.
marketing kind of annoyed you, but then you ended up liking the actual place.
Mm.
That's
Yeah, it's a shame. I may have never given it a shot if I didn't live in Pennsylvania, where
Right.
you can't throw a baseball without hitting a Wawa
They are everywhere. They really are.
everywhere.
They
But
fucking-
they're a great establishment. you
They
know.
are.
They do a
They
good
are.
job.
Yeah,
They're pretty consistent. I don't
Yeah.
like the ones that don't have gas or bathrooms.
Oh, I was just gonna say
Yeah.
that today.
I hate
I
when you
am-
go on the GPS and you go to a Wawa and it's like, yeah, we don't have gas or bathrooms.
Right, right.
Mhm.
What do you have?
That happened to me today. I almost ran out of gas, and I was asking somebody in the area, "Hey, where's the nearest Wawa?" And they're like, "Oh, just be careful. The Wawa doesn't have gas." I'm like, "What?"
Mm.
Kind of Wawa doesn't have gas.
It'd be good in the app, like the Waze app, if it differentiated. I guess you could.
I
hit the
think
gas
there's
button.
something about it that it'll tell you like the price of the gas, and if you don't see that, then
Yeah.
you kind of know that it's not a gas
Mhm.
Wawa.
Right.
It's annoying though because it'll still come up when you search for gas stations, won't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I
I'll have to check. I'll have to double check.
Remember the time we were in the car?
We
We were in the car, we were driving home, and we were trying to find a coffee shop on the way back, and it said, "Oh, this one's like 0 minutes off the route."
Yeah,
And you
right.
typed it in, and it added like an hour to the trip.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's like, "Oh yeah, we can get you to a coffee shop as long as you don't mind an extra hour on
Yeah.
the road."
And we're gonna tell you it's actually 0 minutes.
They
extra.
told you it was
Yeah.
0 minutes.
That's
Wow.
happened to me a lot recently. Now I don't trust it at all. But I wonder what happened. There's some sort of bug now in the Waze.
Jeez,
Thanks,
wild.
Google.
somebody hacked it and was like, "You know what? I'm gonna mess with everybody."
Yeah, they
Mhm.
bought Waze and then they destroyed it.
They have an
I
hour
want
I
to
in
love
get-
that
one
feature
direction.
where you can find, like if you're going from, let's say you're on that 2-hour trip and then you put that middle destination in and it'll find the best one. It used to work flawlessly.
Hmm.
Forget about it now.
You know what we need to do is we need to find a coffee shop that is Christian conservative coffee shop or
Hmm.
freedom loving coffee shop.
Hmm.
And I would challenge them to, if they put an ad on with WFYL, then on Friday mornings for a set period of time, we'll figure out how many times we'll do this.
Yeah.
Mike G will buy the first 20 people who walk in and mention the program a free
Yeah.
cup of coffee.
I love it. We got to
What do you
find a
think?
place like that. I'll make the phone calls.
What do you think? Because there are gripes with other coffee shops about not being
Yeah.
pro liberty, pro Second Amendment.
Very true. Very true.
I'm not sure about the one I went to today because they were
What-
having. I
what
had an
was
experience
today?
as I was telling Philly Chris. I had 3 encounters with different industries today, telling me their supply chain issues.
Oh, yeah,
like
what was-
legit where they can't function.
Hmm.
And one of them was at a coffee shop and they couldn't get a certain flavor cream in. And it didn't make any sense because the same company makes a different kind of cream and all of this is different ingredients, but they couldn't get the certain kind of cream in. It was the strangest thing. And I said, don't tell me supply chain issues. Yep. Prior to that, it was a pharmacy. And actually they're not for me, but I had seen things about Adderall. So I specifically asked, because I wanted to talk about it on the show. I said, what about Adderall? Because you can go through severe withdrawal on that stuff. And they said that's been having supply chain issues. I don't know the reason why.
Okay.
And so that's dangerous for people who've been on that and then to not be able to have it. So I said, well, what's everybody doing? And they said they're making suggestions for other meds, but that still does not replace it. And then the other industry was at the place, their drive-through wasn't working. And I asked why, and they said they needed parts and they can't get the parts in. And I said, why? And they said, supply chain issues. I was like, what? 3 times in one day, guys.
That's an interesting sign. It's good to be aware of, and yeah. Not good. Supply chain.
Chris and Russ are getting ready to just hide in the woods from now on.
Oh yeah, that's right.
My
bunkmate.
It's going in that direction from real life experiences,
We're getting closer by the day, yeah.
And it's
Starting
all
the Mike
different
G in the morning compound.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Russ
what would Russ's job be if we had a compound? There's like no more computers, right?
He says he knows how to grill.
Oh yeah, he says he can grill.
Russ, you know how to grill?
Maybe he could like guard the front gate, like because when people come up, as soon as they start talking to him, they'll be like, maybe we're gonna go somewhere.
Just have him complain to them for like 5 minutes in a row.
Right. No, we're not looking for a place to just play.
We had about 100 people come and they thought about invading the place, and then Russ started complaining and they killed themselves.
Or people wanted to live with us, come live in the compound, and they start talking to Russ. He's like, yeah, it's hot in here. They complain we can't get firewood. These guys are annoying. And they're like, never mind.
You guys are always making me do things. And
Philly Chris wakes up too early.
Russ. Russ is not there.
He's already gone.
He does this often. He won't answer if we start talking before him about him.
They get the guy in the bunker with the squirrel jerky and the Miata red.
But please don't lie, Russ. I mean,
just mustard wine. Didn't they have mustard wine?
Yeah, the mustard. We need to get some of that. Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, before the show, Russ was saying that he would never bunk with Philly Chris. He also said he would never bunk with Mike or any of us. So that's why we started this conversation.
Somebody never went to summer camp.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're traveled on a sports team.
He likes to be alone.
It's all right. I get it.
I can agree. I mean, forever, if you had to be a forever bunkmate with somebody at the end of the world, I mean,
It did kind of hurt my feelings though, Rob.
What is the worst commercial of all time? Pee Wee Herman did a PSA about like don't do crack or something like that. I don't know if you've seen that one. That's pretty funny.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty good.
I've seen that. That's pretty good.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
I'm good. Good. Thank you. Peace and love, everybody. Stay safe.
Great show.
All right. We've got, I don't want to announce who we've got next week yet because we're tying up some loose ends as far as that goes. I don't know if we're doing Wednesday or Thursday next week. I think it's going to be Thursday. The following week will certainly be a Wednesday. So everybody make a note of that. We will be doing the program on Wednesday, the 17th.
Cool beans.
I think the week before that too, right? Wasn't because
Possible.
Billy Chris thing. I think we
I'll
have
be
to do
going
Wednesday,
north for a
too.
little bit.
Yeah, I think we
The
were
week before that.
possibly going to be doing Wednesday for the next couple
next
weeks.
week.
We're not sure. So, well, next week's a tough one because depending on who the guest is,
Yeah.
we potentially have a pretty big guest for next week. And if that guest pans out the way we've been discussing, then I'm kind of at the mercy of his schedule.
I might have a location. I looked into this a little bit. I might have a location I could go to Thursday to do it. So if it needs to be Thursday, just do it Thursday and I'll figure
If
something
I end up, but I mean, if I end up having to do the program with this guest on a Tuesday at noon or something like that,
Oh,
because
okay.
that's all they've got,
Yeah.
then what I'll probably end up doing is I'll take the opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
do it, and then we'll just broadcast it Thursday evening.
Cool.
Kind of the way we did with K Solo that one time.
Yeah. I wonder how he's doing.
I feel like Chris, just don't do it in a public library because that's usually leaning towards the left, and they might kick you out of there.
We should do that sometime just to do it.
That would be funny.
I'll be really loud. See if I can get
It's like Portlandia.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order, Russ?
Why are you asking me?
Well, there you
Talking to
go.
you for like 10
Oh
minutes.
my
You
gosh,
haven't
Russ.
answered anything. You haven't answered
Right.
about what commercials you don't like. You haven't
We
answered
do. We
about...
do love you, Russ. I hope you know that.
Yeah, I just step away.
Yeah.
There was a problem.
Oh,
Okay.
Well, you missed the
many-
whole
bunch of
chat
V-shred.
about bunking with you.
bunch of
Yeah.
V-Shred commercials. He had to save the world from V-Shred commercials.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was thinking originally
Hanging
king
out
size bed, but maybe just a queen will be fine.
Chris, you can try it. You try any of that, Mike's gonna end up with a missing gun and a missing bullet.
What was that, Russ? That's all the time we got for today. Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Philadelphia. I'll be joining as your legal analyst. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.